Meanwhile, good evening, everybody. We are just waiting for our esteemed guest to just arrive in a minute and start off. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule for this session. I'm sure you will have an enlightening session. We'll just be starting in a minute or two.
I think we should thank, what is your friend's name, Punit? Arti, for letting us use the...
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, and Neha.
I think Mr. Nilesh is there.
Mr. Nilesh OG is here.
Okay.
You might want to unmute him. Punit?
Yeah, yes. Yes.
Namaskar. Namaskar.
Namaskar. Thank you for joining us today. Pleasure to have you.
Okay. So I'll request everybody to switch off their videos. Mr. Nilesh is there, and now Nishi, our admin, will take it from here.
Yes, so just begin with asking everyone to turn off their videos, please. I noticed there's a few members still with their videos on, so this is just to prevent any kind of lagging or anything. Thank you. Okay, so we've got quite a few people here. We're actually live on Facebook stream as well. So okay, this is going live to our Facebook group. So hopefully there's kind of hundreds, maybe thousands of people watching this right now. So I'm sure we'll be very happy with their session today. So I just wanted to start by thanking all the people that made this possible today. So thank you to the team, my team, Punit, Manoj, Prasad, and everyone for making this possible, and for Arti for helping us with the actual Zoom link and everything. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to do this today. And Manoj's friend Neha as well. I think she helped make all the flyers and stuff. So thank you to her as well. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our esteemed guest today. So his name is Mr. Nilesh Oak. A lot of you might be aware of him, and some of you may not be. So for those who aren't aware, he's a very highly regarded Indologist in his field. He's got years of research behind him. He's the author of various different books, including The Historic Rama and When Did the Mahabharata War Happen? He's been nominated for various awards with regards to his literature and so forth. So it's a very big honor for us to have him today with us. So thank you so much for joining us. If you've watched Nilesh Oak's videos, you'll be quite impressed because he uses quite a lot of terms that, I really kind of like. So empirical evidence, objectively testifying. Now, these are the kind of phrases that get my spidey senses tingling. So if you've watched his videos, he's become quite of a battle axe in the Indology field, where he's kind of chopping down his opponents, I would say, with very highly sophisticated empirical evidence. So it's really wonderful that we have people like him in this field that are out there debating, challenging, presenting their theories in this realm of science, I would say. So thank you for joining us today. And I think the way we constructed this interview is, as I told you, it would just be like a formal kind of conversation. So I've kind of got so much stuff that I've written down, and loads of questions and so forth. So I've got some questions on my phone, and I've also got stuff that I've written down as well. So hopefully I won't take up too much of your time and be greedy with your time, because I know there's probably loads of people who want to ask questions as well. So without further ado, I think we should get straight into it and start by asking you some questions, okay? So the first question is, did you want to actually say a few words before we actually start?
Okay, thank you. Thank you to everyone who is involved in organizing this, and of course the viewers. My greetings to everyone on the auspicious day of Ganesh Chaturthi today.
Yeah.
Okay, so
yep.
It's been celebrated, it was started, the specific celebration was started by Lokmanya Tilak, like more than 100 years, 125 years ago.
Right.
And so that celebration, people in Mumbai know that. I mean, it's celebrated all around India and across the whole Hindu, participants. but very specific type of celebration in Maharashtra or Mumbai. So celebration. So greetings to all of you. Quickly, I will mention what you said, the term, and I like that, you know, the chopping down my opponents, you know, and of course, Henrik Zimmer said the best things can never be told. The second best are misunderstood. And that is the metaphor, you know. So
Right.
when you said chopping down the opponents, there are these people with a low intellect. They will immediately jump on it and says, what do you mean chopping down on the opponents? In fact, they may not, of course, they will see very much as a chopping down. But if you go to Upanishad, where, you know, Mundaka Upanishad, where it says, Satyena labhyas tapasa yesha atma, samyak jnanena brahmacharyena nityam, okay? Antasharire jyotirmayo hi shubhram, yam paschanti yataya kshina dosha, which is to say, our goal is to minimize our errors.
Sure.
And when I am talking to the opponents, those people who are willing to come for a debate, open debate, those people who are running away from the debate, but will write about my research, and that's a great thing. I mean, you know, so if you, there are 3 or 4 different books written critiquing my work. And I
really?
want actually, yes, oh yes. And, you know, I want many more people actually to come and critique it, whether they do it in a methodical fashion, whether they do it in an intelligent fashion, whether they do it in an idiotic fashion, you know, like everyone is welcome. And that itself kind of tells you the value of what I am doing, you know, because unless there is a resistance, you know, there is no movement. I mean, that's what Newton's laws also tells us, right?
Of course.
But the last point I wanted to mention was the kshina dosha. So when you said chopping down the opponents, and I agree with that, essentially what I'm trying to do is, this is a method, you know, this is the Indian tradition of a vada, you know. So Krishna says, vada pravadata aham, you know, this a proper vada is like a vibhuti, you know, we should see a Bhagwan into that. And the objective of that vada is to minimize the errors in these many other researchers that you called as opponents, but also minimize the errors in my work. I mean, there would be errors in my work too. And, you know, it's not always easy for me to see them, but it's easy for others to see them. And actually what happens is when those are brought up, it leads to new additional growth of knowledge. It leads to new revolution. So it's a very healthy process if done it in a right way. Now, that's not always how it happens, but it is a healthy process. So that's my opening comment. And with that, we can get into the questions.
Yeah. I think that's wonderful what you've said. And I think that's, you've kind of presented it in a very kind of humble regard as well. So, you know, like you said, no one is going to know everything. And if we follow the scientific method, then there's always going to be new evidence and contradicting theories and so forth. So it's an evolving process itself. So I think that's very spot on what you've said. So thank you so much for that wisdom you've just given us. So, and so yeah, if we want to start with the first question, so I'm just going to read some of the questions off on my phone, which I jotted down the other day. So the first question is, in Indian psyche, Indian civilization and Vedic civilization is viewed as almost eternal. One yuga to another and one creation to the next. Yet based on available empirical evidence, what can we say about the antiquity of Indian civilization?
Okay, great question. So when we start looking at the creation, let's say take a Nasadiya Sukta of Rigveda, or many of the creation narrations in our ancient Indian narratives, whether they are Rigveda, I mean Vedas, they are Arshakavya like Ramayana, Mahabharata, Upanishad, Puranas, you know, they will talk about, you know, Brahma, like Brahma being created from a Vishnu, and then he created a Srishti and so on, right? In the modern science, we talk about the Big Bang and multiverse, multi-universes, and what happened before. Very, very similar, you know, metaphorically very similar. So in an Indian tradition, what we will call that is a Mahakal. Like if you go to Ujjain, there is a temple of a Mahakal, you know, Rudra or Shiva. Mahakal means going from minus infinity to plus infinity. Okay. So in that sense, yes, this is a Leela of a Bhagwan, you know, this is the Leela going on, a dance going on, you know, like a Shiva's dance, you know, Shiva's dance like a Nataraja. It's going on all the time. Now, When we want to think of it in a historical perspective, Itihasa, in the some sense we can grasp it, otherwise, like, we cannot even discuss it. Infinity to infinity, we cannot, it's hard to discuss. But we want to, right? But we want to grasp it in some fashion. Then we want to talk about the Khandakala. Okay, so it has to start somewhere and it has to stop somewhere. So now, if we just to answering your question, if we start from where we are today, and if we want to go backwards, and if we look at the Hindu civilization, now we can use the word Bharatiya civilization, Indian civilization. I'm not stuck on the word. None of us should be stuck on the word. The Bharatiya is a good word. So is Hindu. So is a Sanatani Vedic Dharma.
Yes.
What my research has shown, and there are many other researchers, not many, but there are few other researchers who have also done very original work. And what their research, but what my research has also shown, is that definitely we have empirical evidence. Empirical meaning something that objectively testable, something that you and me can agree to, look at that evidence and agree to.
Yeah.
That evidence is telling us that our civilization is at least, and this is very important, at least are more than 24,000 years old.
Wow.
Okay, and we are not saying it is only 24,000 years old. I don't want anyone to say, oh, how old is our civilization? 24,000 years old. If they say that, that is a wrong answer. They need to say more than 24,000 years. The reason is we already have evidence that goes into 26,000 BC, 38,000 BC, 55,000 BC, 75,000 BC, and actually even further back in antiquity.
Yes.
But what happens is, as we go back, the evidence gets less and less. That objectively testable evidence gets less and less. And, the evidence coming from multiple streams also kind of dries out. Yeah. Because, in order to feel a bit confident, we need evidence coming from multi-disciplines, different disciplines. So that, as of now, kind of dries out before 24,000. And therefore, as very confidently, anyone who is listening to this should able to say definitely more than 24,000 years. So that's the antiquity we can talk in a very empirical fashion that can stand the scrutiny of any scientific inquiry anywhere around the world, from anyone, from a Nobel laureate to a non-Nobel laureate, and it should stand the scrutiny.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, going by just what you said, we can trace like early Indic art to the kind of Mesolithic and Neolithic period, which goes around to 40,000 BCE.
Yes.
So I think... Sorry about that. Bunny, do you want to mute this person's mic, please?
Yeah, Punitji, you will be busy doing that because, some new people who come there. And that adds to the fun of this conversation, by the way. So, please go ahead.
So yeah, going back to what I was saying, around 40,000 BCE, going back to the kind of Neolithic period and so forth, we see the earliest remnants of Indic art. So I believe there were ostrich shells that were found in Rajasthan, which were decorated, and that was around 40,000 BCE. And then we see this unbroken link to the Indus Saraswati tradition as well. So the art that's found in the Indus Saraswati tradition is directly linked to that of the ostrich shells and so forth found in the Neolithic period in Rajasthan. So one of the interesting things that you mentioned as well in one of your videos is the 17,000 plus years of this unbroken chain. And we see this kind of continuity of the evolving civilization from many thousands of years ago. And you also said that, this is just the kind of tip of the iceberg. And we will uncover more evidence that shows that Indian civilization goes back much, much further. So going back to what you said. And you also said that the Rig Veda is 22,000 years old, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Right. The specific point I said is that the oldest portion of Rig Veda, based on the river Saraswati evidence, we definitely know that they are older than 22,000 BC. We know that for sure.
Okay. So that's when you people hear the Rig Veda going back to 22,000 BC, that's a really large number, right? We know that the Vedas were kind of transmitted orally for many thousands of years.
Yeah.
So is that what you're stating, is that the before 22,000 years, that was the oral tradition that was being passed down?
Yes, and not just only before 22,000 years. In fact, even after 22,000 years, right down, frankly, to our times. You know, I mean, we can say, I mean, the documents that extant documents that we have of, say, Veda, because they were written on a palm leaves and some other things, you know, they don't go beyond 500 years. So the oldest document that you may find right now, you know, I mean, document in the sense of the age, the you know, the dating of that document will go 400, 500, maybe 1,000 years, you know. Then if you go into the epigraphs, they will go older, like a Tamrapatra, you know, the copper plates, they will go older. And then there is stone engravings and so on. The point is, the tradition of the Rigveda was maintained in an oral fashion for much deeper reason. It wasn't maintained in an oral fashion because we did not have the script. We actually have indirect reference to the script right in Rigveda. And you know, when we talk about Ramayana, Mahabharata, say Ramayana, I have put the timeline more than 14,000 years ago, and Ramayana has indirect references to script. So does Mahabharata. And while I am at the point, and we may not get time to come back to the script, I will mention the specific reference to Rama's ring that Rama gives to Hanuman to take it with him. And it has Rama's insignia, you know, Rama's name engraved on it. Now, what does that mean? Or we have a descriptions in Mahabharata that these all great warriors, their arrows, though their arrows used to have their name engraved on it. And we have those references in the Mahabharata. So scripts have changed, but the script was always there. The art of writing was always there. It was sometimes not practiced or not used for specific purposes. You know, so to preserve the integrity of the pronunciation, the uchar, the ups and downs, and you know, the knowledge. You know, so that's what it means.
Wow. So we basically have this culture going back many thousands of years. That's, you know, transmitted orally, and you know, like you said, only up until 500 to 1,000 years ago, people actually started documenting this. And so,
no, let me quickly correct that. I'm not saying they only started documenting 500 years ago.
Okay.
All I'm saying is the whole tradition of writing would have existed for a very long time, going back into thousands of years. But nothing of that writing records have survived because of the medium they used. Some has survived, others has not survived. But it exists. They coexisted. See, right now we are having a conversation. But if this was not possible, the Zoom or whatever application we are using was not possible, you in London, me in Atlanta, we would have communicated through letters, you know, few hundred years ago. So they communicated through both things, but right now nothing stops us from communicating via letters. We just find this efficient, and therefore we do it. So my simple point, all of these techniques coexisted for a very long time.
Okay, right, okay. Well, thank you for clearing that up as well. So, okay, we'll move on to the next question. So with regards to, sorry, just bear with me 1 second.
Yeah, please, take your time.
Okay, so I suppose this is kind of relating to the antiquity of what we were just talking about as well. So is it important for an individual to know the specific limits of the antiquity of Indian civilization? Is it not just enough to know that it's very old, rather focus on the philosophy and Aditya medicine and science technology inside it?
Okay, again a great question, and this is a frequently asked question, or sometimes frequently asked criticism also of my work.
Right. Okay.
You know, which is to say, okay, but why bother? And why bother knowing when exactly it happened? Does it really matter? All that matters is the wonderful philosophy that is there, the moral tales that are there in these Itihasa. I mean, you know, in this course. And so why bother? Okay, at a very simple level, there is some truth to this. For example, you know, if I have a certain tool, like say Apple phone, I
Yeah.
don't need to know how exactly Apple phone works. If I know how to use it for my purposes, that's good enough.
Sure.
Okay. In
Okay.
that sense, that's perfectly fine.
Mhm.
Now, what the dating effect, you know, for example, if you read Mahabharata, if you read Ramayana, what you
Mhm.
will find, especially this Itihasa, you know, and Itihasa has a very specific purpose. You know, the definition of Itihasa is also Purva Vrittam Katha Yuktam Itihasam Prachakshate.
Right.
Purva Vrittam, these are past events when they are told in the Katha form. Katha meaning they are told in a form that is educational,
Yeah.
entertaining, enlightening, and
Mhm.
it is said in such a form that is easy for everyone to understand, easy for everyone to remember, so that they can derive benefits from it. You know, we can get
Yeah.
encouragement and so on and so forth.
Sure.
So as far as that message is concerned, that's good. We can actually consume it without knowing exactly when these things happen. However, we should never confuse that with recognizing the importance of knowing exactly when they happen. And here is why we need to know that. Because if you want to know, this is just one aspect, moral aspect, but if you want to know about truly about our civilization, like the science and technology, the social norms, you know, how they change over a period of time, you know, how they went through ups and downs.
Yeah.
Ditto for science, ditto for technology, ditto for medicine, ditto
Mhm.
for philosophy, ditto for all the other developments, you know, the Shastra and Astra and all of that. Then we need to know the history, and then we need to understand the timeline, because certain thing is appreciated when we know the context of a time.
Of
For
course.
example, just a quick example, let us say,
Yeah.
if I tell you as a part of a narration, you know, you said, okay, Nilesh, where have you been? And forget the corona and COVID right now, therefore nobody is traveling. But
Mhm.
otherwise, if I would have said, oh, 3 days ago, I was in Mumbai, and now I came back yesterday to Atlanta. You are not surprised by that. Okay.
Mhm.
But just imagine if I would have said the same sentence, say 500 years ago, you would have
Right.
called me mad. He says, what are you talking? Nonsense. Okay.
Yeah.
This is what I mean by we need to know the timing, because it gives us a context to understand, you know, or we
Understood.
feel even the aha, or how is this possible, and so on and so
Mhm.
forth. So for
Yeah.
the context, the timing is very important. And it is not something I am saying it. If you read Ramayana, if you read Mahabharata, you can also see that in the Purana, that it is a misunderstanding that is been told to us, and we have been brainwashed to think that Itihasa doesn't matter. Indians don't have a Itihas. Indians don't have a history. Not true.
Mhm.
On the contrary, the Indians, the Itihasa, Ramayana, Mahabharata, they are so much. They have gone into so much detail to encode the things so that we can find out the exact timing of these events, and so it
Sure.
mattered to them.
Yeah, yeah. I think, yeah, that's a very important thing that you've said. I mean, we have to know our history in order for
Mhm.
us to kind of know who we are as a race of people and so forth. And, these are stories and narratives that we pass down to generations and generations to come as well. So
Right.
I think it's really important in that sense. One thing I wanted to ask you with regards to what you just said, with the actual epics themselves, we find that many years down the line, things have been possibly added on or
Mhm.
subtracted, and they've gone
Mhm.
through many kinds of interpolations and interpretations and so forth.
Mhm.
For instance, Valmiki Ramayana might be different to a different Ramayana in a different part of India, so there will be
Mhm.
always differences and so forth.
Mhm.
So how do we know what the actual genuine story was and what may have been added and subtracted on during a later period of time?
Okay, another great question. Okay, so I'll split that in a couple of fashion. First
Okay.
thing, what you said is also indeed true, and this is not limited to Ramayana or Mahabharata. This is not true only to Indian narratives. It is true
Sure.
for anything that
Everywhere.
we have
Everywhere.
around the world, right? So if
Yeah.
you go even the say Christianity, you look at the Bible. Just for the
Yeah.
same act of Jesus, there are multiple accounts, and they contradict. You know, they
Yeah.
conflict with each other. You know,
Yeah.
they're not the
Definitely.
same.
Yeah.
Why does this happen? Because a writer of a Itihasa might be collecting this information from different sources and
Right.
then documenting it. We can see the evidence of that in Valmiki Ramayana. We can see the
Mhm.
evidence of that in the Mahabharata. Okay, so Valmiki is also using secondary sources. Mahabharata, Vyasadeva is also using secondary sources, like Sanjaya is coming and telling to Dhritarashtra, and that's how it comes to us, and so on.
Yeah.
Now, any historical document over a period of time, when it is copied and recopied and so on, and people write commentaries and people take notes on the palm leaves and somebody copies them, all kinds of errors enter the system. Okay. The one big one that people worry about, and it's true, it's an interpolation. Somebody just inserting something that was just simply not there. That's one. But even there are other serious errors like translation, transposition, transcription, transliteration, like somebody copying the word. You know, in Mahabharata, there is a word, something like, you know, for somasya laksha vavruttam. But somewhere in some documents, like you said, different parts of India, you say instead of somasya, you say yamasya. Because maybe that word from a palm leaf was not very clear. So the person is trying to make sense of what could be this word, what could be this letter. And so the somasya became yamasya and things like that. So we have that, and therefore we make critical edition. Now to answer your main important question. So how do we know which one is authentic? If you come to Valmiki Ramayana, there are many Ramayana beyond Valmiki Ramayana. One thing you will find that all of them refer to Valmiki Ramayana as the original Ramayana. Okay. So they have expanded with Katha. Remember, we talked about Purva Vruttam, Katha Yuktam. So they have expanded. So they might have done that, but they always give reference to Valmiki Ramayana. Same thing for Mahabharata. There may be other things written, but it always refers to Vyasa Mahabharata. Now, within that also, you have found many variations. That is what we have a critical editions done by Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute. Now, so question, I haven't answered your question. How do we know what is authentic? Well, that's where there are many ways to know it, but I'll tell you my work, my research work, that was not my objective to say what is authentic. But my research work has indirectly answered that question. What I did is I looked at all these different variations. I mean, all these different manuscripts of, say, Mahabharata for the dating of Mahabharata. I did the same thing for the dating of Ramayana. Now, remember, I am agreeing that it has all these errors that you mentioned. In spite of that, when you look at 300 plus astronomy observations of the Mahabharata text, or close to 600 plus astronomy observations of a Valmiki Ramayana text, and when each of them individually or in a group, you know, for Mahabharata or for Ramayana, you solve like a jigsaw puzzle, like a crossword puzzle, they lead you to a very specific date. In case of Mahabharata, 5561 BCE, the year of Mahabharata war. In case of Ramayana, 12,209 BC for the year of Ram Ravan Yuddha. Then you have to say, there might be some errors, but overall, this seems to be a very consistent information that has come to us from those times. Otherwise, this would have not led to that specific answer. For example, in a Rubik's Cube, getting all those cubes together, or in a crossword puzzle, there are no multiple answers. Like sometimes we may not be able to solve the whole puzzle, but if we can solve 90% of it, it's a very unique way that the way I would solve is the way you would have to solve to get to that answer. So actually, my research work, although that was not the objective, actually we can assert that the thing that has come to us, Mahabharata, Ramayana, are very much, for most part, in original form. Granted, there will be some interpolation, there will be some translation, transposition errors, and so on. But so what? It is still taking us what we want to get out of these Itihasa.
Sure, of course. Going back to what you were saying with regards to, the kind of secondary kind of process in terms of, if we look at specifically Mahabharata, for example, you mentioned, that Vyasadeva is getting the story from Sanjaya, who can see what happens on the battlefield and so forth.
Right.
Now, how do you kind of, for someone, let's say, who's not, has not been kind of introduced to the epics and so forth, if you're explaining this in a kind of scientific sense, how would you make sense of, this person being able to have this kind of divine vision and being able to kind of tell this story and then this person writing it down? How would you kind of correlate the two?
Great. Again, a great question. I'll split that into two. The first thing is I would ask them to go and start reading Mahabharata. Because just the reading of the Mahabharata with some translation and, hopefully multiple translations, because, the translation is also challenging at times. Most of these, what can we say? This misinformation or misunderstanding sometimes we have, what exactly it means, like Sanjaya had some divine vision. Some of these things actually will fall off. That is not to say that all the mystery will be gone. No, it will not be gone.
Sure.
For various reasons, because it's a long time and we don't know exactly what it means, the word it means. But briefly about Sanjaya, what Vyasadeva says, this is at the beginning of a Bhishma Parva, because Dhritarashtra is blind, and the Vyasadeva is kind of appointing Sanjay, somebody who will continue to keep Dhritarashtra up to date on what is happening.
Yes.
And he's saying, I'm giving him the blessings, giving him the power, so to say, that he will able to see through the day, see through the night, he will not feel hungry, he will not feel thirsty, he will not be injured, So just like, for example, in the today's times, just as a simple metaphor, the Red Cross people, during the war, they will go and save the injured people.
Yeah.
Now they wear this band, like which says, hey, I am not fighting on either side. I'm like, a Red Cross person, Yeah. So nobody hurts. The both side people on both sides may not hurt them, Now they might get hurt with the bomb and whatnot, but nobody will shoot at them, so to say.
Sure.
This is something like this. And if you read Mahabharata, then we know that the Sanjaya is going and observing the fighting and coming back many times to tell. So it is not like Sanjaya is sitting in one room observing what is happening and telling Dhritarashtra. In fact, the whole descriptions of the war begins is very, very interesting. So the dialogue between Dhritarashtra and Sanjay, or when even the Bhagavad Gita is told to us, meaning in the Mahabharata text, although it was told on the first day before the war began, but it comes to us via Mahabharata text after the 10th day of the war. So when in the Mahabharata, when the scene begins, actually Sanjaya is running towards Dhritarashtra. And he's saying, Bhishma fell down in the battle. Bhishma fell down in the battle. And he's referring to the 10th day of the war. And then he's telling, oh my God, Bhishma fell in the battle. And Dhritarashtra says, oh, what happened? Tell me. And then he starts telling from the first day. So actually, for first 10 days, Sanjay was on the battlefield, observing everything.
Right.
And now he's telling the detailed narration. So actually, if we read, most of these misconceptions actually vanish.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So it's definitely not like the serials where they show he's sitting in the room with Dhritarashtra and he's Vyasadeva gives him the divine vision and then he's able to kind of see all these things. So
I would say quickly, it's not any different than actually what happened in, say, World War II versus we watching World War II movies. There is a gap there. So.
Sure, of course. Yeah. Okay. So next question, with regards to what we kind of just bouncing off what we were just discussing is so with regards to dating the Ramayana and Mahabharata. Now you're known for kind of determining the timing of Ramayana and Mahabharata in the kind of most scientific manner. What are these dates and how did you arrive at them? And can you briefly describe the method for us?
Okay. So the both, I mean, it's good to combine these two together also, although I will split it for just the timing purposes. The method that is used is nothing but what we call the modern science. Okay, the logic of scientific method, the logic of scientific discovery.
Sure.
And while at that point, I will not go elaborate on that, but briefly I will mention what we consider modern science. Professor C.K. Raju has written few books and given lectures like, is science Western in origin? And then he's arguing there that it is not, Now, as a humanity, yes, we are all making progress and Western science did make significant progress in last 500 years. And that's all good stuff. But is it in Western in origin? No, actually, they had a very disastrous method of science until 500 years ago, and frankly, until 150 years ago. And we have evidence of that in a written form. In Indian side, we have Shad Darshanas, Vaisheshika, Nyaya, Sankhya, Yoga, and Purva Mimamsa, Uttar Mimamsa. And then there are many other tantras and whatnot, Tantra Yukti. They also describe this method. In fact, I will say they not also. They describe this scientific method in much more detail with lot more nuances than even the modern science has come to, even today, even to this day. So when I'm saying the method of modern science, I mean that is the method of our Nyaya Darshana, Vaisheshika Darshana, Sankhya Darshana, and of course the modern science. Quickly, what it means is this. how does this begin? You know, people sometimes, somebody doesn't just wake up and says, you know what, I want to decide the dating of Mahabharata. I want to decide the dating of Ramayana. I'm not saying anything wrong with it, but in science, how does anything begins? Why does new theory come up? Because we have some problem that is not being solved by anyone else. This is a litmus test of the original work. Okay, if somebody is truly doing original work. For me, it started with a one specific problem with the Mahabharata. I'll not go into the details unless we have a time afterwards, and people can read my books and watch videos. That Arundhati Vasishtha observation that nobody, everyone, many people have discussed, many great astronomers of India have discussed. It has puzzled them, confused them, but nobody has solved. And I went on to solve that, you know. So now the method is to, you have a problem, to solve that problem, you propose a theory. Then once you propose a theory, that theory itself tells you how it should be objectively tested or what is the proof of that testing. And then if you're successful, then you draw an inference. Okay. That's how I started with a one observation from the Mahabharata. And it took me 15 years, by the way, from 1995 to 2009, just start struggling with this one observation. But what it gave me was amazing. It's like a Newton's theory and a Kepler's theory and Einstein's theory. That's something that fascinating or even more fascinating. And then what I did is I then started, I was studying Mahabharata, but now with a very methodical fashion, I extracted all the astronomy observations from the Mahabharata text. That is because my theory was a astronomy theory.
Right.
My theory said all astronomy observations of the Mahabharata text are actual, factual, visual observations of the sky of Mahabharata times.
Right.
For Ramayana, the same thing. All astronomy observations of Ramayana are actual, factual, visual observations of the sky of Ramayana times. And so what this Arundhati did, it told me that Mahabharata war is not possible after this date, after certain date, like 4500 BCE, and it is not possible before 11,000 BCE. It has to happen. If that observation has to be true, scientifically, empirically, objectively, then it has to happen in between. But that is just one observation. So when I went now, additional observation in an iterative fashion, all of them took me towards that. And that's how I did it for Mahabharata. That came to 5561 BC. Exactly same thing. I don't have to repeat for Ramayana, you know, same method. I actually found more observations, and it took me to 12,209 BC as the year of Ram Ravan Yuddha. And then based on some additional observations from there, what is the year of Rama's Janma? That comes to 12,240, his birth year, BCE, and so on. So that's how I did it.
Right, okay. Because these are very kind of specific dates that you mentioned in your book in Historic Rama as well. So in terms of the actual Yud, you've got the exact precise date of the 24th of December and to the 7th of January to 12,208 BCE. So this is based on strictly astronomical references.
Strictly astronomical references, correct. And it's not one astronomy reference. It's a combination of astronomy references from, say, Ramayana. That will take you to that date, yes. And that's where the beauty of an Indian calendar comes into picture. The Indian lunisolar calendar. That this is not a luxury for many of the other civilizations of the world.
Yes.
Okay? And of course, we have to consider ourselves immensely lucky that Valmiki and Vyasadeva decided to write down these observations. If they wouldn't have written, again, we were, we had tough luck.
Yeah.
So it is specifically because of a Indian lunisolar calendar. To the extent now, I have developed a course on an introduction to Indian calendar, because if people want to understand the beauty of how this evidence takes us to these dates, they must have a basic understanding of Indian calendar. That's just a sidebar. Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, yeah, I'm sure, like, personally, I don't have much knowledge of the Indian calendar, and I'm sure that there's many people out there that probably don't as well. So I think that's obviously a good starting point for us to learn about if we're actually going to look at the evidence as you've suggested. So definitely something we all should kind of take heed to. But you mentioned specifically that you found over 500 astronomical references in the Shastra that's related to Ramayana and so forth, right?
Yeah.
Which, like you said, with regards to Arundhati and stuff, which would you say is the most significant and the most important? And why has no one else, apart from yourself, like other Indologists, why have they failed to find all of these references which you've managed to find?
Right, right. See, one of the Indian scientists, very famous Indian scientist, if you have heard the name, Professor E.C.G. Sudarshan. He passed away just a few years ago. He should, I mean, he won many other medals. He should have won 2 Nobel Prizes.
Okay.
And those who won the Nobel Prizes actually acknowledged that he should have won, by the way. Okay, but he did not, the way the politics of Nobel Prize works.
Okay.
He has written one article, and he has called it a causality and grace.
Okay.
Okay, the krupa, the krupa and the karya karana bhav, and I'm just using, I just gave that to, like you said, why is it that many other researchers, whether Ramayana researchers or Mahabharata researchers, did not land on these and did not come to these, but I could find them. Okay, I would say the grace of Bhagwan, somehow he wanted to leave it for me. I mean, there is no other easy explanation. The someone who came very close to it, there were few, by the way, just I'll mention as a few names, who were at least aware of these very specific observations. And I'll come to that, which one are important and why they are important. But likes of Lokmanya Tilak, there was a great astronomer, Shankar Balakrishna Dikshit. There was another great astronomer, V.B. Ketkar, or there was one astronomer, Lele Shastri. Then in the relatively recent times, Bharat Ratna Panduranga Vaman Kane, P.V. Kane. Okay. So yes, people were aware of it. Like our Professor R.N. Iyengar, he's in Bangalore, he was Indian Institute of Sciences, now with the Jain University. And he was aware of Arundhati Vasishtha observation, and so many others. What happened is they were aware of it, but they could not comprehend why it was said what it was said. And they could not objectively test it to define this time intervals. So that's why I'm saying it was a grace. Somehow I would say the higher forces wanted me to do it. But now let's get to
divine
why,
intervention.
Right. Let's get to why are they important. And again, this goes back to this method of science. Before finding something, we just don't go and suddenly start somewhere. No, that's not what the method of science is. Okay. So for example, if I want to decide the timing of Mahabharata, I have to look at the evidence to see, do I get a higher upper and lower bounds? Is there something that tells me that this thing definitely did not happen after some time or definitely did not happen before some time? Okay, when I was stuck on this Arundhati Vasishtha observation, I came across this. I did not know that whether I will able to empirically test it, or if I was successful, it would tell me this bound. I had no idea whatsoever what it will give me. But it was a problem that was not solved. Therefore, I started. And by luck, again, I'm saying by grace, the way it happened, it gave me the boundary. But once it happened, then I go to another piece of evidence, it gave me another boundary. So it's like, where is the Niagara Fall? You don't start looking for a fall in Europe or in Africa. You will find a lot of waterfalls, but it won't be Niagara Fall.
Yeah.
So you need to bound the region. And this is a method of science. Have you used vernier caliper before? The vernier caliper that we use to measure the diameter or thickness of some instrument? No? Okay. Or micrometer. What we do is, there are 2 scales. One is the approximate scale and one is a finer scale. First, we take the approximate reading, and then we take a secondary reading, and we combine the 2 to get a precise and accurate. Some of the important observations, and I can briefly say that depending on the time, but Arundhati is very important. The evidence of Bhishma Nirvana, this is like 100+ different pieces of evidence from Mahabharata. They tell you that Bhishma was on the bed of arrows definitely for more than 92 days. And that looks like a simple number. But once you put that number in an astronomy puzzle, it tells you that the Mahabharata war is not possible anytime after 5125 BC. It is that precise. That is the beauty. So these all observations like Bhishma Nirvana, Arundhati Vasishtha, they allowed me to narrow it down. This is only from astronomy. In case of Ramayana, the Ramayana describes the pole star of Ramayana times. It says Brahma Rashir Vishuddhascha Shuddhascha Paramarshaya Archishmantah Prakashante Dhruvam Sarve Pradakshinam. It is saying Brahma Rashi is the pole star. Okay, and Brahma Rashi is a Vega, and we know that the last time Abhijit or Brahma Rashi or a Vega was a pole star was 12,000 BC.
Right.
So it has to be at least that much. Now that is not the only evidence. And there were evidence of the seasons, astronomy-based evidence. What is interesting, and I don't want to go long on this, what is interesting is once I found this evidence based from purely from astronomy, then actually evidence started pouring in. This is again grace, I would say, has to be the blessings.
Yeah.
It started pouring in from all different disciplines of science. You just name it. It's like a geology, hydrology, oceanography, climatology, genetics, physical anthropology, seismology, paleontology, paleobotany. You just name it, and the evidence came pouring in and giving you that upper and lower bounds.
Right. Okay. Okay. Thank you for that. With regards to astronomical evidence, I mean, some critics would say that it's may not be that credible. I mean, what would you how would you respond to that?
Again, a great question. Yeah. So, for example, I would really love to understand what is their rationale. I mean, what is their background? What is their knowledge who are making these claims? Just to give you a background, the most successful theory of modern science, by modern science, I mean the science, the Western Europe that developed for say last 600 years. The most successful theory of modern science is the theory of cosmology, is the theory of astronomy.
Right.
Okay. There is no better theory that is more successful than the cosmology. I mean, all the famous names that we hear actually, right? Starting from say Copernicus, Kepler, Tycho Brahe, Galileo. I mean, these are all names, the famous names we hear. Newton, Maxwell, and Faraday and Einstein and whatnot. They are all working on this. Okay. This is the famous theory. Now, the data that is coming from this theory is what is used for validating the references from Ramayana and Mahabharata. Okay.
Right.
So I don't understand their argument, even where it comes from. I mean, it doesn't have legs, it doesn't have hands. But let me tell you something more. The beauty of Ramayana and Mahabharata is this. Because, I mean, not to go too technical, but in astronomy also, there are two phenomenons. This is what we talked about, first finding approximately correct and then precisely accurate,
Sure.
Like Arundhati Vasishtha gives you approximate range. Okay. So that approximate range is due to something called precession of equinoxes, like Earth's axis that goes and makes a 26,000 year cycle.
Right.
And then we have the local movements, the movements of the planets around the sun and around the nakshatra and whatnot. Now, these two movements are decoupled from each other. Okay.
Right.
They're both astronomical, but they are decoupled. And why is this important? Because they are decoupled, but they come together in terms of evidence in both Ramayana and Mahabharata. So now actually I'm going to turn it backwards on its head. I'm saying the modern astronomy science helped us validate Ramayana and Mahabharata. But Ramayana and Mahabharata evidence is actually now proving to be like a calibration standard, like a gold standard to prove the validity of equations of astronomy, equations of modern science. Now,
right.
this is not everyone will necessarily understand this, but this is a goosebump moment,
Right.
So these are acting as a golden standard. So forget about their, now these people, you hear some people object to it, but when I ask them for like open discussion, they don't come out. When I ask for open debate, they don't come out. There are people, now this is going beyond astronomy, even hydrology evidence, river Saraswati evidence, other oceanography evidence. They will object, and which is great. But then I will say, some people will ask me for my PowerPoint presentation and say, hey, please send me the presentation so that I can study very well and respond to you, rebut you. Now, some of these people who ask me for it, I have given it to them 5 years ago. 5 years ago, 4 years ago, 3 years ago. These are famous names, by the way, even in the Indology studies, Indian studies. And to this day, I have not heard from them the rebuttal or nothing.
So everyone's running scared then, basically, yeah?
Yeah, they don't have to, I think, because we need to come together to take this to the next level. But whatever their fears, some people get stuck. See, again, that's why our philosophy is very important. Again, I quoted that Mundaka Upanishad verse. Our objective should be to in the search of a truth.
Yes.
And not my truth, not your truth. Satyena labhyas tapasa yesha atma. But for some people, they find attachment, so much attachment to their own claim, whatever it is.
Right.
That it's very hard for them to disassociate.
To let go, yeah.
Sir Karl Popper, London School of Economics, he has
Yeah.
said, good tests kill bad theories.
Right.
We survive to guess again.
Right.
So we shouldn't take it too personal, but
Definitely.
people do, and that is one of the reasons why they would just hide and not come out in the open.
Right. Okay. So basically, I think if more people kind of work together, and you'll be able to dig up a lot more evidence and become a lot more credible in terms of the research and stuff that's going on. But obviously, you're saying that that people find it hard to dissociate from their own theories, and they don't want to kind of objectively kind of test other people's kind of evidence and so forth. So
right. So in cricket, we say, or on sports, no individual is higher than the sport itself. It's the same thing. Like, this whole Indian civilization or dharma, no individual can be higher than that.
Right.
And so we should be ready for it. For example, the definition of a Sanatan Vedic dharma, like Yaskacharya, who is a Niruktakar, Nirukta is like you can think of etymology dictionary to understand Veda. It's not easy to understand Veda. He has defined Sanatana as a Sanatano Nitya Nutana, meaning Sanatan Dharma, our tradition, is something that is capable and willing to refresh all the time in the context of a new evidence, in the context of a new inference, new knowledge. So we should never be fearful of changing our claims. And that applies for my claims too. If somebody comes with a better claim tomorrow, I would be the first one. I'll be the most happy person. And instead of 55, 61, I'll start saying whatever that date is.
Right. Okay. Right. So with regards to what you've just said, we were following the scientific method and so forth. So next year, there's nothing stopping someone else coming out with a different theory and evidence that kind of contradicts what you're saying. And, so how will we definitely establish what is the correct datings and what is the correct evidence? Will this just be an ongoing, evolving process?
Well, it is always going to be evolving process. You ask a great question again here. I mean, whoever asked that question. So will we know everything about Mahabharata or Ramayana ever? The answer is no. Okay. In fact, a lot more happened during the Mahabharata times or Ramayana times. Okay. We only know whatever was written as a part of Valmiki Ramayana and Mahabharata or any other ancient narrative.
Sure.
But let's take this most successful theory of science, which I said, the cosmology. Okay. Now, do we know, is Einstein the last word? Of course not. There are people working in quantum mechanics and string theory and there are 17 different theories in quantum mechanics right now. Nothing wrong with that. But one thing is sure, whatever Ptolemy had this supposedly the model 2000 years ago with Earth at the center, okay, and everyone rotating around. Then the Copernicus came and Copernicus said sun is at the center. Okay, so now, but Copernicus also was not correct. He said sun is at the center, but everyone is rotating in a circular orbits. Then Kepler came and said, yes, sun is at the center, but the orbits are not circular, they are elliptical, and on, right? And then now we also know that sun is also not steady. Sun is also rotating in the Milky Way, right?
Sure.
So our knowledge will continue to expand, but are we going to go back to the model where Earth is at the center and all the sun and all the planets revolving around the Earth? Possibly not. Now it may happen. If there is a very strong evidence for that, it will happen, but most likely not. Are we going to go away from this understanding that the orbits are elliptical and not circular? No, we will not go away. In fact, Newton showed why even a deviation from elliptical orbits will also happen.
Sure.
So what I'm saying is the direction arrow, like the arrow of progress, is going in a certain direction. So for example, right now, if we have to, unless we find another completely unknown version of a Ramayana, Valmiki Ramayana or this Mahabharata, the dating that I have come around, the certain parameters will not go away. I mean, I am, in my subjective conviction, because I have explored that whole map of 14,000, 10,000 years very well. I feel 100%. I mean, I'm willing to bet my whole investment, which is not much, my worth, saying, okay, there is no other date. I mean, I have that conviction. This is what Nassim Taleb calls skin in the game.
Right.
Okay. So you may claim something, but do you have the conviction that this is the correct one? And are you willing to expose it to a scientific inquiry? I can say that about Mahabharata, I can say that about Ramayana. But my point is, even if a different date comes, it's not going to be totally wacky. You know, there are certain parameters like Arundhati Vasishta, Bhishma Nirvana. I mean, those evidence has to match. And you know what that is showing? I mean, if you have seen my other videos, there is a 1600 years time interval that goes from 5125 BCE to 6700 something, 6700 BC, like 1600 years period. That is the period where, based on all the Mahabharata text we have to go look for that year. So someone may come and claim something, say, different than 5561 BCE. It in principle is possible. But if someone goes after 5000 BC or someone goes before 7000 BC, just for simplicity, no, they are talking of some different Mahabharata that you and me don't know. So unless we are going to find a totally different copy of Mahabharata that no one has seen, this is not going to change. And even if we find another copy, still the question will remain. So now why do we have two totally different versions of a Mahabharata, right? Still, it doesn't take away the credibility of 5561 BCE.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that wonderful explanation. That was very detailed. Another thing I wanted to talk to you about is the term which we call Yuga dogma. So I've noticed, like in our group as well, you know, people say, you know, the Ramayana was millions of years ago. There's people that even say in our group like 18 million years, and all these really, really kind of obscure numbers. So going back to the actual yugas and stuff, how do we, what can we just nip this in the bud and say, like, these numbers are just kind of way out there, and what are the real definitions of yugas and how are they calculated?
Right. Well, to nip it in the bud is actually very easy. Okay, that's not the problem. The problem is people's brainwashing has happened for such a long time.
Right.
And you see, people feel brainwashed. People will believe in something, but they will not do anything. Most of them, I'm saying, not all of them, to even go in support of their own belief. You know, they said, yeah, that's what it is. That's what was told to me. What else I need to do? And that is not the method of a Sanatana Vedic Dharma. Sanatana Vedic Dharma method is of an inquiry. You are always allowed to question. You know, Bhagavad Gita also Krishna says, Tadvidi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshantite jnanam dhyanina tattvadarshina. How are you going to get knowledge? Oh, somebody told me I'm believing it. No, that's not the method. That's a starting point. But you ask a question, you start an inquiry, not just ask somebody a question. But back to Yuga. Yuga has many different definitions in our narratives. So Yuga has a meaning. It is our concept. We should feel good about it, but we should not be blind to it. It should not be just a andhashraddha, blind faith. We should study this further. There are multiple definitions, and the definitions are not just the definitions in terms of time. A simple definition of a Yuga is a specific period of time. That's it. That is a very simple definition. Because of that, we have a definition of a yuga where 1 year can have all 4 yugas. 5 years can have 1 yuga. 5 years can have 4 yuga. 1000 years can have all 4 yugas. 1000 years can have 1 yuga. 2000, 3000, 4000, 5000, 12,000, 26,000, 60,000, 95,000 years. All kinds of definitions. So where does this come from? We don't know. But I'll tell you the famous definition that you refer to, like 432,000 years. I'm sure you have heard that, right?
Yes.
And then the twice that 864,000 years is the Dwapar Yuga, and 3 times and 4 times.
Treta Yuga and so forth.
Yeah. That confusion is very easy to explain. I explain it almost in every lecture, and still people will ask me the same question next time in the next lecture. The Yuga is defined in an astronomy text, in the Surya Siddhanta or Arya Bharatiya, in a sense of 432,000 years. Years meaning the sun's rotation around the earth, as seen from the earth, of course. In reality, earth is the one rotating around the sun and completing a circle. That number was chosen as a mathematically convenient number. And in our ancient Indian narratives, there are so many other numbers. We might have to do another session sometime to go through those numbers fun. But this, I'll just mention the Yuga because 432,000. The reason this number was used, so that this number was large enough, so that the for when sun's rotation or the completed 432,000 years as seen from the earth, or earth rotation you can call.
Yeah.
In that time, you can describe the rotational orbits. I mean, how many rotations of all the visible planets like a moon, and Mercury and Venus and Mars and Jupiter and Saturn, and also the Rahu and Ketu, meaning the nodes of the moon, in a full integer number. You can see that in a Surya Siddhanta, integer number. So it will say for these many times, the rotations of the Mars are these many, 59,800, whatever it is. So what does that do? When you do the mathematical calculation, it gives you very accurate and precise orbital period of each planet. It was a mathematical arrangement that to give us an accurate answer. But someone somewhere, I don't know who, and I don't know when, took this number and literally took it to mean, okay, this is the duration. Surya Siddhanta says duration of a yuga. In this yuga, these many rotations happens and so on. But somebody took this to mean this is the duration of a Kali Yuga.
Right.
And then the twice that is a Dwapar. In fact, look at the word Kali in the game of that Dyuta that Yudhishthir and Shakuni played.
Yeah.
Okay, that Kali is a 1.
Right.
When you do the Kali, that's like a 1. If you play what is that, Ludo or Parchesi and those games like that, right?
Yeah.
And then the 2 is a Dwapar. And 3 is a Treta. Think of the word Treta, 3.
Yeah.
And Satya Yuga or Kruta Yuga, Kruta, Quattro in Spanish, Chaturtha.
Okay.
See?
Right.
So 1, 2, 3, 4. That was this numbers. But somebody took this. Somebody took astronomy reference of 432,000, and in a simple language made a royal mess out of it. And what that does, if we just dogmatically stick to these numbers, we destroy our own history for no reason. It is time to wake up for every Indian and get out of this dogma.
Sure.
So yuga has its meaning, but not to be confused with this Kali Yuga of 432,000, twice that is a Dwapar Yuga. It totally destroys our sense of a history. We cannot make sense out of them using Ramayana, Mahabharata, Rigveda, and so on. Sorry, long answer, but it needed to be given because it's
that's
deep dogma.
Yeah. No, that's perfectly good explanation that you've given, and I think that will kind of give clarify a lot of confusion that's probably out there as well. So, like I said, these really high obscure numbers that people throw out, and I think that's the kind of thing that we need to cut out because it makes our history and our books and so forth, it gives them less credibility, especially when we kind of throw these kind of figures out there.
Right, and actually it's the other way. Because if you truly understand the true significance of 432,000, it's marvelous. Okay, just I'll throw the other number, will not go into the detail. For example, astronomy radius for astronomy observation that is used in Surya Siddhanta and of course in other text also is 3438. 3,438. And when the Western people looked at that number, they were saying, what is this crazy number? I mean, some arbitrary number. I will not go into that today. That can be a whole talk. It's such a marvelous number, such a amazing creativity, amazing ingenuity of Indian astronomers. But if you don't understand it, you're going to call them backwards. They don't know. They just randomly chose a number. Nothing is random. Nothing is random.
Right. Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. I think we're going to take, I've got 1 or 2 more questions, and I think then we'll take questions from the group. If anyone wants to type in your questions now, then we can read them out after. So with regards to evidences in terms of Ramayana and Mahabharata, we've talked about astronomical evidence and so forth. What are the archaeological evidences that we find to actually distinguish, to say that these are empirical evidences?
Okay, great question. Okay, now we have to again understand what archaeology is and an expanded definition of archaeology. Okay. So for example, to many people, and even many people, when I say including archaeologists, okay, for them the definition of archaeological evidence is pots and pans. Okay, I call it. So they dig something and they find a metal hook, a sword, or some pot, some pan, some clay pots. and stuff like that. Of course, that's
Sure.
archaeological evidence, no doubt.
Yeah.
But if we expand the definition of archaeology,
Mhm.
I will include also the archaeoastronomy, which is my work. It is also
Yes.
archaeology, okay, but in astronomy, not with the pots. But
Right.
even go beyond that.
Okay.
For example, when we look at, say, geology evidence, okay, so take hydrology or, hydrology or morphodynamics of rivers, the old ancient river paths, how they change their paths, when they change their paths, what was their width, how far they went, went to the ocean or not. That is also archaeological evidence. You're digging under the ground or you're using satellite imagery to find it.
Sure.
Oceanography is also archaeology evidence. Seismology is also archaeology evidence. Paleontology, which is looking at the fossils, looking at the fossils of elephant-like creatures like Gompothere, with the 4 tusks, which are described in Ramayana. That is archaeology evidence. It's not only pots and pans. Now, once we, and genetics, it's archaeogenetics, Now, if you start looking at this one by one, we'll start with the archaeology. That's what people typically ask. Where are the pots and pans, What happens is, as you go back in time, the archaeology evidence in terms of pots and pans and swords and chariots and whatnot is going to get less and less.
Sure.
What many people don't understand is actually the archaeology evidence that we do find is a very small percentage, like 0.0000001% of actually what happened.
Sure.
So in a way, we are very lucky when we find something. We should be surprised when we don't find evidence that we are looking for. We are, beggars cannot be choosy. Looking at the history, we are beggars. We have to do with what we find. Okay. So now if you look at, say, just the archaeology evidence in the sense of pots and pans, and digging, what you find is a continuous civilization in India, the evidence of it, even the pots and pans, and then the city structures and whatnot, maybe village structures, going back to 7000 BC, 9000 BC. So that covers Mahabharata in terms of the presence was there, the villages and those presence was there.
Sure.
If you go back in archaeology, archaeo-agriculture, look at the history, evidence of agriculture, you go back to 16,000 BC in Indian subcontinent, in Sri Lanka. Not many people know that. 16,000 BC, the evidence of established agriculture in Sri Lanka.
Sri Lanka, okay.
If you go back to, and this is not limited to India, by the way. Just recently they found, stone tools that were used to grind the grains in Italy, going back to 32,000 years.
Wow.
32,000 years. In India, again in Sri Lanka, there is a evidence of harvesting of grains. Okay, going back to, watch this, 43,000 BC. 43,000 BC. This is a peer-reviewed journals. I'm not very great fan of peer-reviewed. That's why I only write my books. I will, as much as possible, I will never write in a peer-reviewed journal. I find that is a time waster. It's a waste of time. Too much energy. But that's a different subject. Okay, let's talk about oceanography. You have evidence that supports very well the Dwarka flooding in 5525 BC. Seismology evidence that does the same. If you look at the hydrology river evidence, so remember, so now I describe Mahabharata in 6th millennium BC, 7,500 years ago. My simple formula is Mahabharata more than 7,000 years ago, Ramayana more than 14,000 years ago.
Sure.
And oldest portion of Rigveda more than 21,000 years ago. And the reason I use that is a multiplication of 7,000, 14,000, 21,000. It's easy to remember.
Sure.
What I just showed to you, this was brought up using astronomy evidence. But if you take only evidence of river Saraswati, river Mahasaraswati, starting with 100,000 years ago, and then coming to our times, by 50,000 Yamuna separated. Then 20,000 BC, suddenly, that's why that date is, suddenly the Mahasaraswati became Saraswati, became very narrow. Then 13,000 BC, Satluj turned sharp west, which is described in Ramayana. Therefore, Ramayana cannot be more than 15,000 years ago. It has to be after 15,000 years ago, and definitely more than 12,000 years ago. So that's how we get these bounds. So I'm saying astronomy gave us the dates, gave me the dates. But this evidence, I'm telling you archaeology evidence right now.
Yes.
And now last one, paleontology evidence, which is like elephants with 4 tusks or elephant-like creatures with 4 tusks, Gompothere. Their fossils are found in all around the world, but including East Asia, like eastern part of Asia, like Thailand and Laos and Philippines and whatnot. And that goes to 9,000 BC, 10,000 BC, 12,000 BC, 16,000 BC, which is the timing of Ramayana. And Ramayana is describing elephants like creatures with the four tusks.
Right.
So that's all archaeology evidence actually coming in support of these days.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you for that wonderful explanation. Just one more question from me, and then we'll take questions from the audience as well. So, in terms of everything in our epics, should we believe everything in the literal sense? Because some of it can sometimes seem more allegoric and metaphoric. For instance, if we look at the Puranas, the Puran have many historical facts, I would say, especially when we look at genealogy and dynasties of kings and so forth, we can determine those are probably historical facts. But they also contain a lot of allegoric and metaphoric stories.
Yes.
So how do we kind of distinguish what can be fact from actual fiction?
Again, a great question. And the answer is not a straightforward black and white type of answer. Okay.
Sure.
In fact, the beauty of our Kavi, the rishis like Valmiki, sage Valmiki, and sage Vyasa, and many others like a Kalidasa, for example. And we call them Kavi, and nowadays we translate that as a poet. But these were not ordinary poets. They were realized individuals at a very different levels.
Sure.
You might have heard of the poetry done in our times. For example, I have one book, and you would have heard this in social media too, where this very recently done, where meaning last few hundred years. If you read in one way, it is a description of the biography of a Krishna.
Right.
But if you read backwards, the whole Sanskrit text, like in the poetic form, it is a biography of a Rama. I don't know if you have heard that. Actually, I have a book like that. So if nobody tells you that is what it is, you will read one way and will know the biography of a Krishna, but you will never know if you had have read the backwards, it was a biography of a Rama, right?
Right.
So these just like these are like a puzzles. These are like put as a puzzles. And so to answer your question, so is it a metaphor? Is it a factual thing? Well, my simple answer would be yes. Right? Actually, there is a not only puzzle, but there is a multiple layers of meaning attached to it. Right. And as our consciousness, as we start studying these, and our consciousness expands, we start getting this more meaning. See, Bhagavad Gita, I am studying right from my childhood. Like the first thing my mother taught me was Bhagavad Gita.
Sure.
The Marathi version of Bhagavad Gita, was Gitai, Okay. And then but I'm studying this for many years, and but do I think like I understood it? Not really. Right. Then somebody I might be listening to someone. Just very recently, I was listening to some wonderful individual, very simple individual from Gujarat. I forgot Mukul Bhai, or I forgot his name.
Okay.
And just he said one sentence from Bhagavad Gita. He quoted, Adhyatma Jnana Nityatvam. Okay, Tattva Jnanartha Darshanam, and he put it in a certain context. Now, I knew this verse by heart, but I never understood the meaning the way he explained it. And actually, it made me like go back to my Bhagavad Gita right here, And I said, okay, that's what it means. Wow. Okay. So my point is, that is the beauty of our Itihasa, but all our ancient Indian narratives, like says take Surya Siddhanta, Rigveda, we have not understood. But there is something else, like Bhagavad Gita also. The beauty is that I said the Nitya Nutana, all of these texts are written with so much thought into it. And this is not some Shraddha, this is not some blind faith that I'm talking. I'm talking from my experience, my limited experience, my whatever humble experience I have, is that as your consciousness expands, you start seeing this. For example, I happen to go into looking for astronomy in Mahabharata. Many people would have read Mahabharata for different purposes, and they would have not noticed this astronomy evidence at all. Quickly, when I was doing work on Mahabharata, and then I asked some great researchers, or I thought they were great researchers, saying, "Hey, have you tried Ramayana? Trying to date Ramayana?" And they said, "No, I have looked at it, but there is no astronomy evidence. There is no sufficient astronomy, or there is not much." I said, okay, maybe that's true. Why should I not believe them? But I said, let me just see for myself. And actually, when I went there, see, Ramayana is only 24,000, 1/5 the size of Mahabharata.
Right.
But it has like a close to twice the number of astronomy evidence, pieces of evidence than Mahabharata. Now, who would have thought that this would be the case? So my
Wow.
simple theory is we have to explore ourselves. But if I answered your question, yes, it is a metaphor. It is a factual. It is a combination of it. And that's why we need to understand the definition of a Itihasa, you know,
Right.
which is dharmartha kama mokshanam upadesha samanvitam purva vruttam kathayuktam itihasam prachakshate. The idea is to give us the suggestion, give us a guidance on dharma, artha, kama, moksha.
Right.
The ancient events are told to us in a katha form, in a story form. That is what Itihas is.
Right. Okay. Right. Wow. Thank you for that wonderful explanation again. So I'm definitely learned so much from this session today, and
Thank you.
I'm glad
Thank
that
you.
it's being recorded today as well. So
Yes.
like so many people have the chance to get all this valuable information, you know, and it will clear a lot of things straight for a lot of us as well, I believe.
I
So
hope
thank
so.
you so much. Yeah, thank you so much for that. So we're just going to take a few questions. Okay. Okay, so we've got a question. How do you increase the adaptation aspects of it? Okay, so we've got a question from Lakshmi Narayan.
Okay.
She's saying to you, thanks for your research in the timeline of our Vedic civilization. How do we increase the adoption of the aspects of Vedic calendar, Yog, Tithi, Nakshatra, Karana, and the Vedic times, Gati, Pal, in our day-to-day lives?
Okay. Okay, great question. I mean, so obviously she knows, she understands the calendar. She gave a lot of other things.
Yeah.
Okay, we have lost our connection with the Indian calendar so much that we have a long way to go. And as a first step, what I started, and you know, those of you who are listening and those who will listen to this afterwards, they must understand how much work goes into getting even a small thing done. Okay, that's, I mean, people think, I mean, I get this suggestion all the time, Nilesh, you know, why don't you work on this? Why don't you work on this? They have no idea. I mean, I don't need any more suggestions. Not that I'm against the suggestions, but they waste my time and their times. You know, I have like 30 projects that I'm working on, and that will take few lifetimes, you know, and right now I'm just working on one.
Sure.
But back to this. So what I did, I wanted to create a calendar. Now, you know, are there not many calendars? Yes, there are many calendars. And I wanted to find the golden medium, you know. So now I started working on this. Someone from UK, by the way, of Indian origin, a medical doctor, suggested that to me in 2012.
Right. Okay.
And I'm working since then. And I was contacting all the Panchanga makers, you know, the Indian calendar makers, to convince them this and that. Do you know how long it took me? It took me until 2020.
Wow.
It took me 8 years. Okay. And this is not the only thing I am doing. You know, this is one of the small thing. But
Sure.
by again grace, I will go to the Krupa, you know. And then finally, one Panchanga Karta, actually his family, I mean, this family is one of the oldest Panchanga makers, a living tradition of India, if not the oldest, called Date Panchang. And funny enough, when it's translated in English, Date last name is translated as a D-A-T-E, date, like a date Panchang, you know. So with that, what I started very recently and with them is called Bharat Dinadarshika. Okay. So it's a very simple start. And in that one, I have deliberately not included yoga and Karan. I have included Tithi, I have included Nakshatra, I have included Mahabharat Samvat, which begins in 5561 BCE. So now, right now we have a Mahabharat Samvat 7581. You know, that's, and I want to use that as a reference instead of a BC, CE, AD, whatnot, you know, for the Indian things. And we should be able to talk of Ramayana as a before Mahabharat Samvat, BMS, and a MS, and so on, you know. So it takes time, it takes a lot of effort, time, resources, and all that. The reason we have not included yoga and a current, because yoga and current, and then the ghati and all these other references she said, the muhurta, yoga and current has to do with the muhurta, okay? And even so does tithi and nakshatra, and they change for every location, they change with the time. So the application has to be dynamic. And that means it has to be an app, the modern world, it has to be an app, you know, that you should tune for London, you will tune for London, I will tune for Atlanta.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
there is a work going on different fronts. Like some of them, it's not confidential, but I would say some of them in works in many ways. And when it comes out, we will do another session. You'll be amazed. Some of the things that are happening under the radar, you know, some very
Right.
fascinating things. But
Sure.
what I would encourage people to do is, you know, those who are listening must understand that these things don't happen in a vacuum. Okay, these things need a lot of time, lot of resources, I mean, application development needs money. Like researcher, like myself, but many other of my co-researchers, I mean, they have a families, so they need support, you know, they need a support. And right now everyone is doing on their own dime, and that will continue. But even just to go somewhere, you know, go to a place to study, talk to some person, I mean, the time is money. So I would say those who are listening must identify genuine researchers, must identify genuine institutes who are doing this stuff, and must consider, in many other religions, it is a well-known thing that people support, you know, financially with their intellect and whatnot. But the Indians have to step up. You know, you cannot just suggest something and things will happen. You cannot always say why government is not doing anything. Government will do in their own ways, but each one of us has to act. You know, that is the message. So the answer to her question is, there are a lot of things in works, and with a causality and grace, some of those things, by luck, you may able to see very soon. They will come out, I would say, within a year's time. Some things have been delayed because of the COVID and Corona related things. But some applications are in development. And, you know, to keep these sustainable when they come out, and I'm not always directly involved in making them. I'm one of the team member, or what you call mentor, coach. When these applications come out, to keep them sustainable, they have to put some charge, like a 50 rupees it may be, you know, it's not high, but they have to put it. And people should be willing to embrace that. You know, 50 rupees is not a huge amount. It's like $1 or £1 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But otherwise they will not sustain, you know, somebody will make it and we will not able to update those. Okay. So that's my long answer. My apologies for a long answer.
No, that's fine. I think that probably answers her question. So thank you for that. Now we've got one other question here from Kashyap. One of the potamology study of river evidences for Ramayana in terms of river Sharavati. Did you ever come across this? Because as per Sitala Purana, the river Sharavati has been born because of the arrow shot by Rama.
Okay, whatever the question that you read, I don't know this individual, but he or she has definitely asked me that question somewhere else, like on a YouTube, or because I remember reading that exact question. And that's great. Okay. I'm going to give a slightly different answer. First thing, I don't know the answer. That is a very simple answer to this. Okay. Sharavati, I don't know where that river is, where the arrow was thrown and so on. But I want to bring the Nyaya Darshana, or our Shad Darshanas, for a minute. Okay. What he or she described just now from this whatever Purana is a Shabdadnyan. It's a Padadnyan. It's a information. It's a written information somewhere. Okay. From that written information to the actual validation of that information, Nyaya Darshana will tell you there are 11 distinct steps. Padadnyan to Padarthasparan to Shabdabodh. It goes through another 3 steps to Upamiti, goes through another 3 steps to Anuman, Anumiti, and it goes through another 3 steps, Indriya, Sannikarsha, and all the way to Pratyaksha. Okay. And the Indian system, the highest emphasis is always on the Pratyaksha. Okay. Like Yoga Sutra you may read, but reading is not same as experiencing it. Then Yoga Sutra expects you to do the meditation and experience what Yoga Sutra is saying. So from this piece of information to actually Pratyaksha, the validation is 11-step journey. Just like what I gave you the example, my journey started with one observation from Mahabharata. The Arundhati, Ya Chaisha Visuta Rajastrailoke Sadhu Sammata, Arundhati Tayapesha, Vasishta Prushtata Kruta. If I would have simply said, hey, it is given in the Mahabharata, Vyasa said it, so therefore it's correct, it has to be correct, so come on. No, that is just a very tamasic attitude. If I just accepted that, you know, that's not correct. Okay. It took me 15 years. So if this individual, if he feels passionate about it, he has to start there. She has to start there, be willing to commit and explore on their own. That person is the most passionate about it. You are not passionate about it, that Saraswati reference, whatever it is, and I am not.
Right.
So if he's hoping that you or me will do something, I will say it won't happen.
Right. Okay.
He has to go and do it.
Do his
And
own
therefore,
research.
therefore our Upanishad keep on saying Swadhyaya Pravachanecha. Do the self-study and do the detailed exposition. Swadhyaya Pravachanecha. Then they are never tired of saying this.
Okay.
So that is the answer to this person. I don't know the answer, but he has to explore it.
Okay. Thank you for that. Thank you. We've got a few minutes left, so I don't know how many questions we'll be able to fit in, but maybe if we can take this one.
Nishi.
Yeah.
This person, let this gentleman Kashyap has 2-3 questions. Why don't we allow him to ask the question himself? We can ask. He had 2-3 questions, so let us give an opportunity to ask the question himself. Kashyap, Mr. Kashyap. So
okay.
We can do that. What I will suggest is to Kashyap ji to ask a very crisp question, and if he can ask in such a way that I can answer yes and no, that would be even better.
Okay. So, Mr. Kashyap, I have.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Shirasastanga Namaskara, Nilesh ji. It's an auspicious moment for me to talk to you and to the entire team which made this event possible. So that thing is Sharavati, like you said, I asked you on Twitter, and you said the exact same thing. So that is something I will definitely try on that. Almost I'm working on it too. So one other thing is, this one. Hello?
Yeah,
yes,
go ahead.
I can hear you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. So the period 1209 BC, right? So that's where Ramayana happens. So there is a number of Vanaras were there. So in just 6,648 years, so did they extinct because there is very less number of evidences, or maybe zero as per my knowledge, so seen in the Mahabharata events. So is that the period? Because we don't really see that Vanaras are just monkeys, like the stupid monkeys. They are not that type. So do you think the extent of Vanaras from 12,000 plus years to the Mahabharata time, is that so?
Okay, I got the question. First thing, Vanaras are not monkeys; they are human beings. Okay.
Yeah.
I would encourage everyone who is listening to go to a YouTube channel called 21 Notes, like 21 and then Notes, Notes, by my good friend Yashodip Devdar, based in Bangalore. Again, he's someone who left everything and now working on creating this with his own money. Okay. This whole series on Ramayana, lot of work is going into it. And if you type like who are Vanaras, in fact, do the binge watching of this 21 Notes. Okay, you will get the answer. But quickly to answer the other part of the question, no, they did not go extinct. We are there. We are human beings. Okay, so Vanaras were in the Kishkinda. Okay, so nobody should take this in a wrong meaning. I'm just saying it jokingly, but in the right way. So people of that area, human beings, they were called Vanaras then. Now, the people of northern Karnataka, just humorously, I'm saying this.
Yeah, I'm from Karnataka, correct.
There you go. So you are a Vanara. You are not gone extinct. Okay. All right. And Hanuman, he was a polylinguist, right?
Correct.
Multiple languages and all that. Then another thing is, if you read Mahabharata in detail, you will find that these Vanaras were also there in the Mahabharata time. They were not as prominent as they were. They became prominent because of the context in the Ramayana. So the answer is they have not gone extinct. They are not monkeys. They are human beings. And everyone should watch 21 Notes. And not only they should watch, they should subscribe, and they should share, and they should hold watch parties and binge watching.
Okay, quick question. Last question from my side. So this million years dogma, right? Whatever you said. So that to support that one, not support means the instance that people may get confused. Is it because the Bhagavata Purana in Tritiya Skanda, 11th Adhyaya, where Maitreya Rishi discusses the event of time with Vidura. So wherein Vidura, Maitreya Rishi actually describes the shortest, I mean smallest amount of time, that is Paramanu Kala, wherein
Yes.
now we will be using picoseconds. That exactly boils down to that, because I'm an analog engineer, so we will deal with picoseconds and femtoseconds. So that's where, because Paramanu is the smallest atom, that's what
Yeah,
we think.
get to the question. I know
Okay.
311, and absolutely, I'm glad you have brought this up. I mean, beautiful.
Okay, so
Yeah,
that's where
beautiful.
actually in that Purana, right? So
Yeah.
the rishis say 16,800 Deva Varsha as the
Yeah.
Satya Yuga and follows on. Like to that 13,200 as the Kali Yuga, 14,400 as the
No,
Dwapara
don't go
Yuga.
into the details. Get to the
Yeah.
question.
So is
Get to the
that the
question.
time? That's where we like people.
Is that where the confusion comes from? Is that your
Exactly,
question?
exactly,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay. Well, that place too, and many other places, but it is not because what Maitreya said. It is because how people have interpreted that and
Yeah,
confused the hell out of everything. Okay.
correct.
The Maitreya would have been saying in a very specific context. In fact, if you go to my Ramayana book, I don't have it right here, either 12,209 BC, that is the title for India, or if you're outside on Amazon, the historic Rama. In the appendix, it doesn't have directly anything to do with the Ramayana itself. But what you are just quoting is what I have quoted in the context of the origin of the weekday names. And this is, Nishiji, that's another subject. But our sequence of the days, like, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you will find that is the same sequence around the world in all cultures. Okay.
Yeah.
But if you go and ask the other cultures why the sequence is like that, nobody has a logical, rational explanation for it. The only place that has explanation is India, okay? And that explanation comes in a Surya Siddhanta, Arya Bhattiya, and it is given in just 2 lines, the one shloka, in one shloka in a Surya Siddhanta and Arya Bhattiya. The point I'm saying is, in that context, I use this thing. So, sorry, Kashyapji. So the answer is, that, yes, that one instance, but in many other Puranas also, you will hear these different definitions of a yuga. Why Purana? It is also there in the Mahabharata. Mahabharata has 5-6 different definitions of a yuga. Okay. So this is a long subject. I will encourage you to watch some of my YouTube videos,
Yes, yes.
not any specific videos. And I have given explanation, different definition, not just definitions of time, but definitions of a psychological state, definition of a action, definition of a administration. These all can refer to a specific time of yoga. So the confusion is vast, but it is easy to remove. Just a quick metaphor I will give you, and I gave the explanation today, that
Yes, yes,
432,000.
yes, yes.
It's like, a cave, a Bhimbetaka cave, which has got 40,000 plus years of paintings in India, Madhya Pradesh. I was there in January. Or you go to Spain, and go into those Altamira caves there, and you go the darkness, but you go with a candle or a torchlight. Once you go inside and you lit the candle, it doesn't take a long time for that million years of darkness to go away. The light comes instantaneously. If we embrace this true understanding of this 432,000 years from Surya Siddhanta or Arya Bhattiya, what was its true original meaning, or what Maitreya is saying as a definition of a time, and not confuse that with this historical timing, then this confusion can go away instantaneously. Otherwise, it will be there for another, I don't know, thousands of years.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question, Kashyap? Yeah?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. Thank you for your questions. I don't know whether you want to take one or two more questions, Nilesh.
Yeah, I don't mind. It's up to you. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So just that way we give everyone a kind of fair chance. So
Sure.
We've got a question from Dev. How much technology were ancient Indians in times of Ramayana and Mahabharata? Did they know about 7 continents and 9 different planets?
Beautiful. So that's, I mean, and a very crisp question. Okay,
Yeah.
did they know about the different planets? Obviously, both Ramayana times, Mahabharata times, they knew about all the visible planets. That is just very, very clear. Both Ramayana also and Mahabharata also.
Sure.
Did they know the planets that are not visible to the naked eye, which is to say Uranus, Neptune, Pluto? And the Pluto is now, whether it's a planet or not, forget that,
Sure.
We don't have a direct evidence, but we do have an indirect evidence that alludes to the fact that they possibly knew even these 3. Okay.
Right.
Not only that, there is another text. Professor Aryan Iyengar has done a wonderful work on something called Parashar Tantra, which talks about many comets And the comets, the orbital period is given as a 300 years and so on. Right now, we don't know those comets. Right now, I mean, NASA knows like a 200, 300 comets or maybe more. And still, we haven't necessarily matched those with the cometary period that is given in Parashar Tantra. And for someone to say that this particular comet comes every 300 years, just tell me how long you have to observe it. So if you look at the astronomy evidence of it, it's a very deep tradition going to at least 100,000 years. It is my subjective conviction, maybe longer, but at least that much. But so therefore, in terms of technology, there is an indirect reference in Mahabharata that tells you the location of Halley's comet when it is not seen, not visible from the earth. And it says it is near Pusha. Now, to know that it is near Pusha, you have to have extremely sophisticated telescopic ability. Otherwise, you are not able to say this.
Right.
Okay. So that is just answer on the technology. Yes, we did. Ramayana talks of Sanjivani, the medicinal plants. Okay. Sanjivani plants, like, that can recover fallen warriors and so on and so forth. So yes. Ayurveda was there. The Mahabharata, we have wonderful descriptions. My other work has shown that Sushruta, who did plastic surgery, like a nose surgery and many other surgeries, 200 plus instruments, definitely goes back more than 8,000 years. I have shown that with the evidence. So yes, the technology, science was evolved at a different level, whatever was required. What you find in the Indian tradition is just like Kashyapji mentioned, a very precise measurements of time, like Paramanu 0.00057, fifth, seventh of a second, 0.00057 of a second. There has to be a reason why it is mentioned to that precise number, just like 432,000 years, So, but what you find the beauty in the Indian narratives, they did not unnecessarily go for precision when it was not required. And they did not shy away from going to a certain precision when it was required. They were very, very pragmatic, very practical, very pragmatic, and that is something very different than what the Western Europeans or Western Indologists and now their lackeys in India, the image that they have created, these people, some dogma, something like this, far from it. In fact, we, in our times, we Hindus are sticking more to dogma than our ancients ever did.
Definitely, yes. I would agree with that. Yeah. Okay, thank you for that answer. We'll take another question.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a question from Biwek Oscar.
Okay.
Today, Sri Lanka and Ramayana era Sri Lanka have some difference because according to Ramayana, Nal Setu, 100 yogna, which shows that there is a difference between today's Sri Lanka and Sri Lanka during Ramayana. Please say something about it.
Okay. Again, this is just like I said, I would say to know the true location of Lanka, and there is no guarantee of success, it will take at least 20 more years of research.
Right.
Just not somebody waiting for 20 years. Nothing will happen. Somebody has to actively do the research like what I'm doing. One of my co-researcher, Mrs. Rupa Bhati, she's based in Gujarat, Gandhidham. She's working on it day and night against all odds, against all the challenges that she faces and I face and whatnot.
Sure.
But just quick hints. So for now, as a proxy, if we want to consider Sri Lanka as a Lanka, I don't see any problem with it. When I wrote the historic Rama, I did not discuss so much about the location of Lanka.
Yes.
Well, because we have to understand it. Every single question takes a lot of research. This is not something you wave a wand in the hand, and then something magic happens. It's not Harry Potter. This is real history, real Itihasa that we're talking.
Yeah.
But there are signals to what I forgot the name that Oscar G that you mentioned. That if you look at the ancient Indian narratives, I'll give you a few hints and leave it at that. Okay.
Yeah.
Ancient Indian narratives refer to the geographical individual pieces as Lanka. Then there is a other Tamraparni, as a another island. The Greek writers refer to that as a Taprobora, got some modified. They also look the same thing. Discussion refers to Lanka, but also Simvala Dweep, which is what we call Sri Lanka today. By the way, many people may not know, but the Sri Lanka as a name to the Ceylon came into being in 1972. Okay, so they took that name as a Sri Lanka. Arabs called it Serendip, like again coming from a Simvala Dweep and so on.
Yeah,
this is one reference. The second reference, and Oscarji what described at the Nala Setu is also good reference, that it is not 100 yojanas. But I don't want people to get too much stuck into 100 yojanas. That could be just to say a long distance. You know, in Ramayana, Mahabharata, many times Dasha, Shata, Sahasra, these names are used in the sense of just showing long distance. Like, you know, it says, how far is London from India? Oh, thousands of miles. It doesn't mean like 1,000 miles, you know, something like that.
Yeah.
So not get too much stuck. But now something else. All the astronomy texts describe the location of Lanka as on the 0 longitude. By the way, the 0 longitude as a London, you know, the Greenwich,
Yes.
that came into being only 150 years ago. Not many people may know that. Before that, it was the Ujjain, you know. And so astronomy line 0 longitude went through Kurukshetra, went through Rohatak, Kurukshetra, that area, Ujjain. There are some other places, and Lanka. And Lanka was very important astronomically, and it was defined as the location of Lanka as a 0 longitude and 0 latitude. Now, if you draw a line through Kurukshetra and Ujjain and go straight down, it doesn't go to Sri Lanka. It goes just east of Maldives, east of Malay. Okay. And right now it is under ocean. I mean, we don't see any land mass which is above. So that's why more research is required as to what happened. There are many theories, much of that. So that's my brief but long answer. But for now, it's okay to perfectly think of as a proxy Sri Lanka as a Lanka, if that helps people. We don't have to start fight over it. Until if anyone wants to do something, they should start doing this research based on the clues that I provided.
Right. Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you for that. I think we'll take one more question because I don't want to take up too much of your time. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. Okay. So a question from Vasudeva Rao. There are a lot of Siddhanta for astronomy in India, like Surya Siddhanta, which you talked about. Is there difference in output of the Siddhanta and which one we should follow?
Okay, great question. Is there a difference in the output? Yes, that's why there are different Siddhanta. Okay, that's what it is. Now, their objective is the same, to understand the reality. Satyena labhyas tapasa yesha atma. Everyone wants to know what the truth is, or the best approximation to the truth. Okay. And how do you do that? Through the tapasya, brahmacharyena nityam, you know, through the brahmacharya. Brahmacharya meaning not just celibacy, it means contemplation, thinking, you know, and thinking, you know, and this contemplation, meditation and whatnot. And through hard work, that is a tapasya. So that's why there are different Siddhanta. Also, everyone understanding is also limited. We are all mortals, human beings. It's limited by our ability. Okay. Just a simple example is quantum mechanics right now has 17 different theories. So the observation is very clear. Observation is there, you know, these light split experiments, you know, whether it's a wave or a particle, those light experiments are there. So outcome is very clear, but what is the karya karana bhav? What is the causality? To explain that causality, there are 17 different theories of quantum mechanics right now. Very crazy, extreme. Same thing we had it in our Siddhantas. Different people did for different reasons, different purposes. It was not, they are not all Siddhanta, by the way. Sometimes they are a Karana work. I will not go into the details. There are different layers of it. Like someone is studying Bhagavad Gita in the details. Someone is studying Mahabharata for the dating. Another person is only studying Mahabharata for moral verses, you know, moral codes, like how to behave. So people are doing even in astronomy for different reasons. So yes, we should study as much as we can. And we shouldn't even think that we have truly understood Surya Siddhanta. For example, like I presented at Oxford a couple of years ago, and Dr. Anil Narayanan, you know, he's a former ISRO scientist. He has also researched a lot. But even if you combine what Anil Narayanan has done, what Mrs. Rupa Bhatti has done, what I have done, and few others, we might have explored maybe less than 30 verses out of 500 verses of Surya Siddhanta.
Sure.
Okay, so there is a lot to be done, but we should study, you know, with the based on our intellect, our energy, our enthusiasm, and whatnot.
Okay, thank you for that. I don't know. We've got one question. We've got one final question, and there's no more questions.
I'm okay. Yeah, but
you're okay.
Somewhere. Yeah, absolutely. You know. Yeah.
I think this will be the question to just kind of end it on. This is the last question. Okay.
Sure.
I don't want this person to kind of feel left out that we missed out his question at the end. Prasad asks, what do you think of the reference to the difference of 1,100 years between Parikshit and Mahapadamanda? Does it bring Mahabharata down to around 1500 BC?
Right. Okay. So this is coming from Puranas. The genealogies from Puranas.
Yes.
And I would I'll give a short and a long answer. The short answer is I will encourage Prasad ji, whoever he is, to go to my blog nileshoak.wordpress.com, and if he types like keyword like a genealogy,
yes,
or a tale like a TALE, tale of two unknowns, the problem with the genealogy. So what this person, I mean, what this he's referring to is a one piece of information, very similar to the first question that came about that river and Rama's arrow.
Sure.
It is a padadnyan. It is a piece of information. This is not pratyaksha. From there, you have to go through the 11 steps to pratyaksha. If somebody does that, and I have done it, but he or whoever should do it, you will find that will lead to some different date. It will not lead to 5561 BCE. But then this is not coming from Mahabharata. And that is when another aspect of scientific acumen that comes into picture called Mahatva Mapan or Taratamya, Vijnana Buddhi aspect. Right. Which is to say, if you want to know about Mahabharata, it is perfectly okay to go and read about Mahabharata anywhere you can find anything. Okay, there are modern writers writing about like some Mahabharata, right? Some Mahabharata character, I don't want to take any specific names, but some Mahabharata novel, Yeah, you can read that. But if you read that Mahabharata novel and use that to date Mahabharata, then the problem is not with the novel, problem is with you.
Yes.
Similarly, what has happened is the Purana have a different purpose, but Puranas also what they are doing is they are taking all the information that they could find and somehow document it.
Right.
We cannot just take one arbitrary piece of information and think that this is a fact and this is the truth. No, it's not. It's a padadnyan. It's a piece of information that you received. You have to go through 11 stages, validate to see if it matches. I can tell you that that particular piece of information that he said, I have discussed it in my blogs, it will not agree with not even a single reference from Mahabharata text.
Right.
No, it wouldn't agree, it just doesn't agree. So yes, it is somebody's understanding of it. Okay, just like right now we have 100+ researchers in last 100 years or so, Indian researchers with a good intention to date Mahabharata, and they have those many different dates. Now, unless Mahabharata is happening in the multiple universes, multiple times, we cannot have those many dates. There has to be only one date. The same issue. So somebody will come to a different conclusion, but if it doesn't match with the internal Mahabharata evidence, then we cannot accept that. This is where the scientific acumen comes into picture. The first importance should go to Mahabharata evidence.
Yes.
Then it will go to others, and come to our times.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we'll end it there. That was the last question. So once again, thank you so much, Nilesh ji, for joining us. We've gained so much from this session, and especially on this day of Lord Ganesha, the god of intellect and wisdom. I think we've all gained a lot of knowledge and wisdom from yourself as well. So thank you so much for joining us today. Just with regards to your books, Historic Rama and When Did the Mahabharata War Happen, and all the other books that people can purchase, where do they actually look for these books? And
wonderful. Glad you brought it up, because there is also some confusion. If somebody is in India, or if somebody is okay with the book being shipped to an Indian address, I would encourage them to go to, if they go to my Facebook handle or a Twitter handle, both places Nilesh Oak. It's a subbupublications.com is the site. And they can order it online, so they should order, but remember, it can be only shipped to a Indian address, and the shipping is included. This is a purely non-profit venture. The person who is doing it is not taking any money. I am not taking any royalty, none. My goal is to get this book in every Indian's hands, in every Indian library. That is the purpose. So we have to keep it sustainable. If you are outside India, unless you want to get it shipped to your Indian address, and then when you visit India, you want to take it with you, go to simply Amazon site, access to, just type Nilesh Oak, Nilesh Nilkantha Oak or Nilesh Oak, and you're
Yeah.
going to see when did the Mahabharat war happen, the mystery of Arundhati, the historic Rama, and Bhishma Nirvana. These are the three
Right.
books.
Books, yeah.
When you go to India, the historic Rama is exactly the same book with a different title called 12,209 BCE. It's
Yeah, I've
not a
seen that.
different book. It's not a different book. It's exactly same book. Those are the ways to do it. The books are available on Amazon with both paperback and Kindle. Okay,
Right.
because some people prefer Kindle. This is not a novel. These are not novels. These are books with lots of rich data.
Yes.
And I would suggest, I mean, if they want to take Kindle, fine, but I would encourage them to go for a paperback, because then it becomes easy to read, easy to go back and pages and refer to it.
Sure.
And I will also encourage them to go to YouTube. Just again, type Nilesh Oak. They are going to be overwhelmed with 100 plus YouTube talks,
Yes.
Sangam talks, and listen to it. And if they go to my blog, nileshoak.wordpress.com, they will see 500 plus different articles. I mean, different notes that I have written. And this all should come together in their knowing about my works.
Yes, definitely. I mean, like, for instance, your one of the book was first published in 2011. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. And like, we've only just kind of hearing about these books and stuff in the last year or so. So,
right.
You know, I'm glad that we actually got this opportunity to speak to you directly, and now a lot more people be aware of your work.
Yes.
You know, like you said, they can go on YouTube and they'll see hundreds of your videos, debates and so forth. So I think this is going to be a really good experience for a lot of people. So thank you once again so much.
And if you have a minute, I'll tell you a very interesting experience.
Yeah.
This is something that happened, you know. So they say really enjoy your life when you are not a micro celebrity or a celebrity, you know. And of course, I had a good time. I was there in India. Actually, I did like a 25 plus talks in 7 different states in less than a month. So just imagine how much I was traveling.
Wow.
But what was happening? So I was doing a lot of air travel, and this time a very pleasant and very interesting experience. And it happened with a couple of exceptions. It happened on my every flight. Okay. So what would happen is when I'm ready to go to the flight, you know, I mean, just standing there or something. One time, like in the Mumbai, you know, I was going to Bangalore, I think. The one person just came, and when he passed by me, I heard he said something like my last name, you know, like a Oak or something. You know? But I thought maybe like he's saying something, and because my name is Oak, I'm listening to it. Then he made another round and kind of looked at my face and this like this. And so he was asking me, are you that Oak? But he was hesitant.
Yeah.
And this thing repeated in my whole Indian journey. On every flight, there was someone. Or I'm eating like a yogurt rice on a Bangalore airport, and another person coming back, you know, he says, by any chance, are you Nilesh Oak? You know, so very pleasant and interesting experiences. But as you said, it took 10 years, and that's kind of a natural evolutionary process. But we have a long way to go, and I don't mean just my research work, but like, you know, we need to accelerate. So everyone needs to participate. You cannot leave it to the researcher to do the promotion of his work and so on and so forth, you know. So everyone has to participate. And thank you very much for the opportunity. This was, I enjoyed the conversation.
Our pleasure,
I hope everyone listening to it also enjoyed it.
I'm sure they did. We've taken so much away from this. And like I said, this is going to be, you know, this is live on Facebook as well. So hopefully thousands of people are watching this right now. So, you know, you may get a lot more people coming up to you and recognizing you after this. So get ready for it. That's all I would say. So, Nilesh ji, thank you so much for blessing us today with your wisdom and your knowledge, and, you know, helping us come to terms with a lot of information. You know, I think we're still kind of gathering everything you said. This is recorded, so, you know, we can play it back and watch it for anything that we've missed out and so forth. So I hope everyone enjoyed this talk, and hopefully we may get to kind of speak to you again. I'm sure that everyone would love to arrange another day if you're up for that as well.
I'm always up for it. Yeah. Thank you.
Fantastic.
We'll
Thank you.
Thank you so much again. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.